It's a great honor to be able to introduce Moby coming out from Valve. One thing I will say about this guy is he's the nicest guy in the world. So anytime during the course of this, this talk, if you have any questions for him that you feel that need to be answered, pipe in. I'm sure he'll be able to give you this is our opportunity now to ask questions. The things that he has seen, you people would not believe. Ask him later on, you know, about iguana roadkill. Ask him about his roommate about 12 years ago, possibly the worst roommate ever. Ask him about his success and things with regard to the wonderful artwork that he's been able to generate for Valve. Ask him anything. Give him a warm round of applause, though. Moby Francke.
Thank you, Mr. Randall. Well, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here today. And I'm really excited to be talking with illustrators. And I'm sure there's illustrators and animators, I'm sure, out there today. Give me a sec. Now, are there people that are interested in video game at all or getting into the industry? Let's see, show of hands, small show of hands. All right, cool, cool. Well, today the talk is going to be very briefly about my journey, you know, how I got interested and into the arts and finally arrived at school and the hurdles that I had to kind of get to actually get to school. And then finally, I'm going to talk the main body of work on Team Fortress 2. That was a game that I was kind of elected to be art director on. I don't like giving credit to myself in any way, but I had a great amount of help in that project. And we're going to just talk about its unique visual style and how we, the artists, created it. And then we're going to also talk about Valve culture. And I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of flat hierarchy, but we'll get into that later on. I was born in Washington, D.C., and these are both of my parents, obviously hippies. My dad was a potter, and he was taught at the Corcoran. And he actually was pretty well known down there, and he actually had his work shown at the Smithsonian for a number of years. My mother was a self-taught illustrator, did work for Time Life Books, and you know, I always looked up to my mom because she always worked super hard. I mean, she took care of both of us. We had a farm. We lived in this old Civil War hospital. It was actually a farm that was once, you know, in the late 1860s, a Civil War hospital back in the day. So obviously a very spooky place as well. That's my brother. His name's Dewey, with the red axe. And of course, that's little old me to his left, or to the left. I've always asked my mom, you know, why did she name me Moby? And she says, because I was a whale of a guy, but it's just not cutting the mustard. It's having a name Moby, and I'm sure any of you who have a strange name out there, you know how grade school is, and it's a very damaging type of thing. Anyways, so we were stunted my growth. So yeah, we grew up on this small farm, and life was pretty rough, but we lived you know, really close to the earth type of thing. In the late 1970s, we decided to move to St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which was kind of like the polar opposite of what we were used to living. And it was this beautiful island, you know, and I mean, it was just fantastic to live down there. One thing that I loved was you know, being downtown as a young little kid and doing sketches of the building facades. You know, these things were 400 years old, these old alleyways, and it was just a gorgeous place to live. But the thing that really fascinated me about this beautiful island was that it had a very dark past. There was the eradication of the Tano Indians during the Columbian Exchange. You know, there was the chattel enslavement of the African people. You know, and there's ruins all over the place, you know, just in these, in the forests, and you know, it's just all right there, this history, this very illustrative history. And I was really, like, just as a little kid, I was fascinated. You know, we were listening to Jimmy Cliff and Bob Marley and, it's all right there. It's kind of teaching you, about all this stuff. Of course, there were the pirates. We had Blackbeard, Bluebeard, Redbeard, Sir Francis Drake. These guys all made St. Thomas and the Caribbean their homes at one point during their pirating career. And of course, there was Camille Pissarro, the father of Impressionism, who was born on St. Thomas. We knew about this when we were little kids, and it was always just fascinating because, he's the father of Impressionism, and he made these risks to become this great guy, this great, fantastic artist, impressionistic artist of painting the people, these peasant scenes, and he was just fantastic. And I have a little example of one of his early works. This was done probably between the ages of 17 and 21 when he came back to the island, and he became really good friends with a Danish artist named Melvin, and he actually encouraged Pissarro to seek this life as a painter. Funny thing about this painting is I actually know where this is, and it's actually an industrial park now. This all has been filled in, and it's just the ugliest place you've ever seen. So that's, I guess, what they call progress. Now, a really catastrophic event happened that really changed my life forever. Obviously, you see destruction here. So life was pretty normal for a while, and then this event happened. I switched too quickly to this slide, but Hurricane Hugo came in and just destroyed our island, destroyed my house, and yeah, it was really difficult. So I don't know if any of you have ever been through a hurricane before, or any type of natural disaster. I mean, I know that the Loma Prieta was here in 1989, and in fact, it actually happened, I think it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks after this event. But the day before that, everything is functioning, right? You've got supermarkets, you've got electricity, you've got your car, all this stuff. Next day, this is what you see. And you don't have food in the grocery stores because it's all been taken, everybody's have hoarded it. So you're kind of left to your own devices. And if you haven't stocked up on food, you're in deep trouble. Also, there's looting and all this crap. But it's pretty scary stuff. No electricity for 6 months, total island in destruction, and of course my school was destroyed as well, and it wouldn't be open for another year. And I was just getting into the 11th grade. I just spent like 2 weeks in 11th grade, and that was over. Now I was going to be doing something else. So I actually ended up dropping out of school permanently, and started doing construction work and digging ditches and laying telephone poles, dismembering radio towers, all sorts of things like that. And I just kind of worked into this type of lifestyle. It just, time went away, and that's all I was doing for 5 years. It was just terrible. But I talked to my brother, and who's also doing the same type of work, and we really wanted to do something different. And so we both decided to take a risk and take out financial aid and look for education and inspiration. And we ended up falling upon the Academy of Art College in San Francisco. We got accepted, and luckily during that time, it was the Clinton administration. It was readily available to get financial aid and Pell Grants and all that stuff. So we were very lucky at that time because we weren't very wealthy. So we traveled in early January 1996, thousands of miles away from the Caribbean to this beautiful place, San Francisco, and it was totally different from what I'd ever experienced. I had never been to really a big city before, and a cold big city, something that's always overcast. But there was something about the life in the city that just immediately woke me right up out of this kind of 5 years of labor and sun draining work, or mind-numbing work. And the thing that I just loved about the Academy, at that time at least, was they had these great programs. They had fine art, illustration, and they were really strong. But I really didn't know what I wanted to be when I went to art school. I knew that I loved to draw. I knew I loved to paint. My brother right away knew what he wanted to do, and that was industrial design. So he was good. I talked to a couple of people, and they said, just take your foundation classes first year, if you can. So I ended up doing that. And while I was taking color and design, it just happened to be at the illustration department. I saw, exactly what I wanted to be, and I saw illustration. I saw these illustrators on the wall, these students, awesome work. And what I realized was that, these students, they would have their name and, of course, the instructor. So I purposely looked at, the student and the instructor, and I actually saw Randy as one of the instructors there, and I just said, okay, I've got to have that guy for illustration too. Writing that down, that was going to be 2 years away, and there were a couple of other teachers that I knew about. But I just set about searching these students. I was like, who are these students? These students are awesome. They're great. I'm going to become friends with them. I'm not going to try to stalk them in any way, but I wanted to gravitate towards the best because I could find that I could kind of emulate their work ethics. And it really turned out to be a great decision in the end because not only did I become friends with them, but I just started adopting their same work habits. So instead of going out and partying and doing anything like that, I would go to class and go straight home, and I'd work until, you guys are probably used to like the all-nighters and 2 nights in a row type of thing. And yeah, I mean, it's just, it's pretty intense, but you get through it, and you're going to be better off for it. Yeah, so having your peer structure is really, really important, and that's how I got my first job. And my first job actually ended up being at LucasArts. 2 of my really good friends who'd graduated about 2 years before, they ended up there, and they said, oh yeah, Moby's, we really like Moby. Let's see if he can come out here. And I was a starving artist. It was my first real career job. Unfortunately, I only ended up lasting about 4 months because the whole division got shut down, and a lot of people laid off. I didn't really like it that much. I was just doing like Boba Fett drawings, and it's just kind of redundant type of stuff. So I went back to school, and I finished up the last year of my program. And yeah, so then it was summertime, and I went about doing my portfolio, and I was really, charged. I was going to take on the world, and I really wanted to get it back into focus on illustration. And I did a couple of, illustrations for the Chronicle and SF Weekly and that type of thing. But the work wasn't coming as quickly as I wished. So I ended up also becoming a teacher at the academy for a semester, and this was around 2001. And this was during September, and Randy had mentioned the roommate from hell. This was a part of my life that was pretty bad because it was like, I had a girlfriend, she broke up, moved into this apartment with the guy I have to call Booger Man. I was living in a bunk bed. I was 29 years old. It was just like, wow, this is pretty bad. Somebody had just stolen all of my clothes out of the, like any good clothes that I had. They took it out of the laundromat. So I had like all of my old student clothes. It was just like, okay, this is great. September 11th happened, and so it was just like, wow, this is this is not working out so well. But then I ended up getting a call from one of my other art school friends, Jason, and I knew that he was working at this company in Seattle called Valve Software, and he said, hey, would you want to come up? And I was like, please. But I was like, I don't think I'm going to be working, up there. I didn't really know about Seattle, and I just knew that it rained all the time and this, that, and the other. So, but I ended up saying, look, I would love to see what you guys are doing. Now, really, the last time I'd ever played a video game was like in 1982. And it was Donkey Kong and, I don't know, Centipede and Phoenix or whatever. So I was kind of, reluctant to go up and be in the industry. So that's what I was thinking that I was going to be doing, something around that line. But I go up, and they show me this. And this was Half-Life 2. And do you guys know about Half-Life 2 at all? Yeah. For the most part? Okay, good, I'm glad. So I saw this, and I lost my, you know what. And I was like, you know, this is actually being done. They're actually making a beautiful, you know, obscure European city, and there was this theme of this, you know, 1984 Orwellian type of nightmare going on, you know, and you had to kind of save the day. And it just really opened my eyes to how mature video games had actually become and how filmic their approach and all these levels and depths of art that goes into, not just on the art side, of course, but the programming, the animation. It was very humbling, and I wanted in. So they luckily, they got me in. I was, they said that my work was a little bit too cartoony and stylized at the time. It was very whimsical, and I was doing a lot of oil paintings at the, during art school, you know, just trying to develop my own style. Sorry I don't have any of my work, but to show from that time period. Well, after Half-Life 2 ended, and I was on it for about 2 years, most of the guys that were working on it, the artists and programmers, they were totally burnt out. They'd been on this project for about 5 years. Well, a small group of us kind of came in, and we had about, you know, 2 years experience on it. So we were really fresh and ready to do something else, you know, right off the project. So while everybody was off taking, you know, taking their break for a month or two, a small group of about 4 artists and a programmer wanted to take a game off the shelf, and that was Team Fortress 2. Now, originally, this is the original Team Fortress. Before we took it off the shelf, we wanted to actually play test it and see how fun the game was. And although the game is not the most pretty game, you know, any stretch of the imagination, it was actually a blast to play. And for those of you who don't know, it's a team-based first-person multiplayer game. And it was originally a modification for the Quake engine. And it was developed by 2 good friends of mine now, the Aussies John Cook and Robin Walker in 1996. So it had 9 character classes. Sometimes I look at these and I'm like, I don't want to even. All right. So it had over-the-top, non-photorealistic or non-realistic gameplay, and there was no intentional visual design, which actually was great because we could go in any direction, and it could be at any time. We could use any type of visual design method to achieve cohesion. So anyways, in 1998, both of these guys were hired, and they went to work on Team Fortress 2. So this is an early version of Team Fortress 2. And it was it boasted like a modern military theme, and which was kind of popular at the time. Boasted same 9 character classes, but the problem was that these characters needed to be more unique, more stylized. You know, you'd have a soldier that could rocket jump, and a medic with a healing beam, and all these characters just, I mean, they just weren't working for the game. They were just failing for the game mechanics. You know, realism with over the top just don't go together. Readability would be a very important part to play. You need to see your characters at a variety of distances and lighting conditions. And if that's the only way you can tell who the medic is across the map. So, and it was interesting coming in at this time, and you know, you'd have to argue a point with some of the old school guys that had been working on this, you know, because you're kind of invading into their territory, you know, the guys that were building this, and they're like, no, this is the way it should go. And you're like, well, there's some other stuff we should try. And luckily we were allowed to do that. But so then how did we actually get here, right? Get to this stage. I always love looking at this because it's like this before and after. But there was a lot of hard work. And in fact, there were 2 other iterations of Team Fortress 2 prior to when I actually got to Valve that I wasn't allowed to really show anybody. So, so anyways, Silhouette. Silhouette, what does it do, right? I mean, can never be overstated. We can tell, you know, who friend or foe. Obviously, that's Superman. You know, when you see somebody walking across the street, you know exactly, you know, how old they are, if they're sick, if they're healthy. It's just amazing, right? the Apple logo. I don't even look at it as an apple anymore. I look at it as this, these beautiful magical devices that we take so much for granted now. Text on and Facebook. Anyways, and of course McDonald's, junk food, and how we get around in a city. All these little signs, these little icons help us to exist. Well, we use the same philosophy during the research for Team Fortress 2. And this is, of course, Mike Mignola. And I understand Randy was telling me he's an alumni. I had no idea, which is really says something great about this school. So what did we learn from Mike Mignola? Well, it was shape design, silhouette. He had this great way of simplifying these forms, these human forms, into graphic shapes that made them very easy to see in a variety of different distances. He flattened, the shadows. He just made them these dark silhouettes. He wasn't really focusing on the details and the nano stuff going on. He just really wanted this bold, impactful thing that would hit you in your face, right? And yeah, you can just tell that that's a Mike Mignola every single time. And of course, there are a lot of people that try to copy, but you can't copy that. So on one side was Mike Mignola, on one side of the spectrum. On the other side, so you have Mike over here, you have Norman on this side. We looked at Norman Rockwell, and of course, Norman used a lot of photo reference that he shot himself to make his very imaginative illustrations. And with those photos, he was able to really make it Norman Rockwell, right? I mean, that's where photographs fail. It's like you just look at a Norman Rockwell painting, and you can see that there are changes that need to be made to actually make something an illustration. And I mean, look what he does to, I think this is Saul Tepper, the model. I think it's one of his illustration friends from New Rochelle, which was where he was living at that time. He totally stylizes his head, and he elongates him, and just does all these fantastic things that just that make it unique. But at the same time, it has that sense of illustrative realism, I guess. So he was on one side, and in the middle there was Mr. J.C. Landecker, and nobody was looking at these guys really for video game. At that time, nobody. I mean, I'm sure that they learned about them, but they're not. Nobody's using this stuff, so it was just ready for us to just incorporate. So J.C. Landecker, once again, graphic, bold, iconic silhouette, interior shapes that gravitate your eye around the composition, and look at his folds and dictating fabric and functionality. It's just, it was just something that I obviously, like when I was a kid or when I was in art school, I saw this guy as a god. He was able to distort proportions in such a way not to break the character, but just to give it even more character. Just this studly guy with, this huge torso, and look what he does with his neck, just scales it up a little bit more, and, gives him a very prominent chin. So we really wanted to experiment with actually making the characters more in this venue as well. And of course, his lighting was spectacular. It's the key, of his magic. And he's using a dominant primary light source, of course, and a rim light or a key light to help just bring the character, just give him a little bit more depth and readability. So this is where we get into the character studies of Team Fortress, and this is a really early on quick drawing. And of course, just from looking at it, you can see that there's an A shape involved. Hands are made bigger, boots are made a little bit larger. Head has somewhat realistic proportions. It's not broken. Another early gouache study of the pyro. And again, just trying to play with form, and we were really just seeing could we actually come up with like a painterly style for the characters? Could we give it that impressionistic look that that these artists were doing at that time? Head shape studies. we wanted them to be stylized, but without breaking them, because we wanted the animators to be able to, convincingly be able to animate them and have them, actually have some really nice facial expressions. Head shape as well, we wanted to intentionally keep them a little bit more blocky. And rather than having, these very rounded shapes that are kind of hard to look at a variety of different distances, having a nice angular structure really holds the character together, especially within the engine. And here's some early versions of the heavy weapons guy, and two different artists coming up with the same character. And so we were able to take those two and merge them together, two different types of ideas, and come up with a final, which is fantastic. Early versions of the engineer. One's absolutely different. The other one, both are totally different. Going in and kind of bringing them both into the same universe. Early versions of the sniper. And I'm just really going to go through these, just adopting the red gloves finally for the medic. Of course, the spy. We weren't sure if you should have a covered face, or, there were so many different directions we could have gone with him, but we ended up settling with just the face mask with his eyes and mouth exposed. And I got a lot of pullback from the soldier, actually, because I wanted his eyes to be, you couldn't see his eyes, right? I wanted him to have this kind of dorky, comical presence about him. So I wanted him to have this oversized helmet. And a lot of people were like, well, I can't see his eyes. So we ended up going with this, and it turned out to be a great idea. This is just a quick example of how we would come up with the character process. So in Photoshop, very quick silhouette shape pose, filling in the interior shapes very graphically, kind of the same way that Mignola would do it. Transferred onto paper, actual paper, much in the same way that maybe Leyendecker would do it. And then just painting opaque gouache, and then having a finalized character. Now from this point, we go onto a model sheet, which is a template, and it's really like the building block of the character design process. And it also acts as a style guide, and I'm going to go through some of these in the process. There's a bunch of these model sheets, but it really just offered us a way of showing off the shape language so that we could keep all the characters very consistent, and it looked like one artist made it, like it was one cohesive product. So as you can see, simple, or the silhouette, somewhat of an A shape, and then solving the interior shapes with simple shadows. It's not just, it's giving a little bit of information to the modeler, and he can go in and give it the detail that it needs. When the model's in progress, he'll send me or any of the concept artists different angles of the character, and then we'll go in and we'll actually do paint overs of that character until we get it to the part where it actually fits into that model sheet. And the same with the heavy weapons guy, just really coming up. When you squint your eyes, it's all about squinting your eyes, right? You just squint your eyes and you get to see, the big picture, so to speak. And of course, there are going to be changes along the way, like we added a vest, added gloves, but the foundation of it really is, the heavy weapons actual shape. And of course, changes again for animation purposes. We changed around some things for the spy. But yeah, we just try to keep that shape language in check. And here you'll see a couple of changes for the scout. And do you guys have any questions at all at this point? Just trying to give some feedback or anything. All right, so anyways, yeah, this just goes on for a little bit. But I really just want to see how these all just come together in such a way. But you can notice like his belt, we changed some of the placement of his packs and whatnot. But in the end, they all look pretty much the same as the template design. So read hierarchy, you want to make sure that you can tell who your friend or foe is. And so we came up with these color keys. So you have two analogous sides, right? So the red is a variety of different reds and oranges, muted colors, with a primary saturation level. Same for the blue. We added a little bit of the orange and yellow, a warm orange for the red side and a cooler yellow, just to give it a little bit of color difference. And read hierarchy. So coming up with distinctive silhouettes. Each of these characters are absolutely different in their silhouette, like just at a first read. We did this through body proportions, weapons, the hats, clothing folds, shoes, all that type of stuff. And we really make sure that we don't want to draw attention to things that don't need drawing attention to, so we'd silhouette the feet, and then we gradiate all the value contrast up towards the chest and head level. And all the saturation goes up there, because that's where you want your eye to really go in the player space. If you mute the colors down to grayscale, you see that the characters share the same exact values. That's so that they can be seen within a variety of different lighting conditions. And so here I've just muted the gray back. And it might be a little bit difficult to see the characters in the background, but for the most part, they're somewhat easy to see. And then you look below, and you'll see the red side is very, very muted, but it's still analogous to the characters. The characters' saturation is pulled way, way up so that they can still read. And then, of course, contrast in color and temperature for the blue side really makes them pop, so you can really tell who you're fighting with or against. World design. So the goal was to create an immersive and believable world. And we did this through material, hue, saturation, value. And we really wanted to go for an impressionistic, painterly look. Most of the games at that time were doing photorealism, and we were like, well, let's just kind of have fun with this. Maybe we can make it something even more. And I always stress research. I mean, we take some time. We'll sometimes take up to a month and change to really just go through the researching of photos, of artists, and all that stuff, so that just so we can pile it all together. In this case, we fell upon Jack Delano, which was a photographer from the late 1930s and 40s, and he was sent across America and even in Latin America and the Caribbean to do these fantastic, rare color photos. And from that, I mean, we were able to pull from him in many ways. And we also went out on location to a lot of industrial areas as well. And, a lot of these were extrapolating, shape design once again, just the same way that we would do it for the characters. We're looking at, rectangle, triangle, the primary, secondary, and tertiary shapes. So you have the linear shapes and these smaller little pipes and grading and all that stuff. We're just kind of breaking it all down from there and seeing how and why this all works, because we want the world to be believable, but we also want it to be stylized at the same time. So just a few other examples. And again, just shape design, shape language, large rectangular forms, linear shapes, like telephone poles and telephone wires. And you can just see that, if you have, diagonals and, or sorry, not diagonals, but horizontals and vertical lines, you're going to have to contrast that with some curvilinear type of elements as well, right? So you just kind of start thinking about, why these things are working. These large areas of visual rest, and then down at the base, you see a lot of visual activity. And we also really want to explore creating depth and perspective using repetitive line, because we wanted to open up our worlds so that it just really was an immersive type of environment. We also looked at a lot of vintage old James Bond movies, which was a lot of fun, because we wanted to contrast these upper farmland industrial sites that were all dilapidated and whatnot with these very clean and sexy styled 1960s Bond scenes. So of course, just having these outdated recorders and computers and all that stuff. We would model all that stuff, and just to give it that immersive quality. You know, this doesn't look dangerous or scary to us anymore. It's kind of ridiculous, right? But I mean, it's really awesome. Underground caves. And, you know, a lot of this architecture now is everywhere. It's prevalent. It's kind of out of fashion, but yeah. But so yeah, we pulled all this stuff. We also used a lot of miniature sets because they usually scale up a lot of the smaller details like bolts, and the painting is actually hand painted, and we kind of wanted to bring it to that level as well. We looked at Dean Cornwell, the Dean of Illustration, for his interpretation of the Great Americana, and also his impressionistic painterly style. Harvey Dunn, you know, his depiction of the rural farmland setting. And of course, Miyazaki, his matte paintings really held up great in a 2D animation set, but when you actually convert that into a 3D world, it actually works just as well. So we did a lot of experiments, and in fact, when we were doing the texture phase of the world design, we would actually try to hand paint the textures with watercolor and gouache, and of course, it would have taken 1,000 years to do that. So we ended up painting it in Photoshop and actually using old photos. So during the concept phase, this is the most enjoyable part. You know, just coming up quickly with concepts, and this could be done through digital. This is a 3D rendering. You can do sketches with traditional media just to really figure out the proportions. Color key studies. Another 3D rendering of the spy base. You know, we wanted to give it that facade, you know, and then have that Cold War presence involved. And of course, I don't know if you guys can see in the foreground, but these are cows that are actually not cows. They're on boards, and one's been collapsed at the base. We would incorporate all that as well into the 3D skybox, and that way everything looked like it was a set design from a movie, and it was all intentionally done. And we even had the cows tipped. You know, it was just a lot of little things that, you know, people that are playing the maps repeatedly can then say, oh my gosh, you know, I just noticed this thing, how cool, you know. And this is, of course, early on, before we knew that the hat thing and, you know, all these items and all that stuff. We actually, a bunch of, I mean, I haven't worked on Team Fortress since its release, or since 2007. I've been off on other projects, so it's great to see what they're up to. Anyways, to contrast the team properties, we used warm colors, natural materials, angular geometry for the red team, cool colors, industrial materials, and orthogonal forms for the blue. You can really just see, you know, just the angles and the contrast of those properties. And so that during the rough shelling phase, it's important for the artist to, or the level designer, to quickly mock up the spaces so that the game designers can go in there and start playtesting the map. It's not going to be pretty, it just has to go in, and it's really like a 3D sketch. And so by and by, we start expanding the world, pulling and pushing. And you can see the little chain link fences in the middle with the little bridge. That's actually the player space that you're going to be interacting, and you're going to go inside of these little facades and do a lot of the game play inside of there. But everything else outside of that is untouchable. And it's really just an immersion device. Lighting, again, is very important. We usually don't light at noon. We'll light at in the morning or afternoon, or even late afternoon sunlight. Just gives it a more dramatic effect. You get a lot of cast shadows that can do some nice visual things as well. And we place the characters, the unfinished characters, within the map while it's being built, so that we get a sense of scale, proportion. But we also want to see if these characters actually do fit inside the world. And so this is a proof of concept, and this really is, this is the point where all the artists get together and we just attack the world, and we start doing all the textures, we do all the modeling, and the skybox, place telephone pole or telephone wires, just kit it out as much as possible. And so see the contrasting world, and going back to those two thumbnails that I showed you previously, showing the team properties. You can see how it all falls together. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you what before and afters. And this is unfair, isn't it? But but these are actually the same map, taken at the same location, and you can really see what art direction can do. I mean, it's really up to you to make it so. I mean, we could have put up walls, but we really wanted to use our imagination and challenge and put a lot of work into the world, so we could just really make it kick-ass and immersive. So there's a bunch of these. But, a room that's just a box, what can you do with that? Well, you can expand it. You can break down those walls. And when you break down those walls, it's an entire scene. This is actually the same scene, but it's on the mirrored blue side, and looks completely different. So there's a lot you can do with imagination. So the spy base. This is the hallway going into the spy base. On the right. It's just, you can just tell exactly where you need to be. And of course, the actual spy base. And notice how, like in the world, we keep the same player space rather empty, except for the walls. Because there still needs to be that player. They need to be able to run around in it. So we're very limited in the space that we need to design in. But we can expand through the walls. Another example, this is Dust Bowl. Just taking, they had the theme originally, yes, but then we were able to take that theme and really enjoy it and make it its own unique setting. And there's not much I can say about it, but just makes the game. Paying homage to Dean Cornwell. Had to do that. But you notice that, see those little windows to the left? We made it exactly the same way on the right. We had to keep all the gameplay in format, so to speak. This is the same map. Break down the walls, change the time of day. There's, eliminate 255 green from the world, and just get it out. And it's still very addictive in the video game industry to use 255 for some strange reason. I think that programmers they love it. They love it. They love 255. That's what they want. But it's our job to fight them. So we fight them tooth and nail. Yeah, so, it's just going to go through these. I almost want to live in there. It's almost like a Soho apartment in New York. 255 again, gone. And I hope this works. Aha, so we get to see kind of this. This is actually a very old rendering, but I just wanted to see how the characters, the saturation of the characters, the analogous world. Love that animation. The skyboxes. The skies have very minimal visual noise, so you're drawn back down to the player space. And this is actually the neutral space, so there's no red or blue except for the actual players. So they really get to pop within that world, and yet still can contrast towards the other side. All right, so Valve culture. So this is how a lot of other companies work. I don't know if you can understand it. It took me a little bit. But of course, the guy at the top is the boss, and then everything trickles down, and you've got minions, right? And you're always working for someone, right? You have your managers that you're working for, and you might not like these people, and they kind of trap you, and you're working for them, right? They're your bosses. They're bosses, and then their bosses, and their bosses, and then finally the final boss, right? And then somewhere on the way, way down below, you are this little guy that's trying to fight their way up to be one of the men. But you'll never get there. Or maybe you will, but you won't like it. So some would say this is what Valve would be like, right? It's a flat hierarchy, but who's that guy up there? Oh, that would, exactly, perfect. Now, Gabe would disagree. He would actually say that this is more of what Valve is about. You know, we're all working together, and we're not working for anyone at the company. We're working for, you know, our fans. We're working for the guys that buy our product. That's it. That's all that we're about, really. You know, and we also love, you know, we love the products that we create as well. So we're not working for the boss man that, you know, is just going to use us and then expel us. I mean, we're hiring the top talent if we can. It takes time sometimes. I mean, I remember last year we hired 2 artists, you know, in that entire year, but they were the right people, because we don't want to work with someone that we have to teach. We want people that will teach us, and we'll be able to come up with the work themselves, because they're their own boss, right? They have the freedoms to create what they want to do. You know, I came to this company, you know, that's what, at least what I initially thought was that, well, wow, I'm going to be working for some guy and an art director, but it was really not the case. You know, you kind of took on, somebody would say, oh, we might need some help with this. You'd be like, okay, and they would just say, here, you own it. You know, you own all this. And you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? On Team Fortress, I was coming up with some interesting designs, and they said, okay, we'll put you in charge, and you can be the filter for that. Not in charge of anything, but really like just a filter by which you know, the art direction could be a little bit more cohesive. So yes, I was just telling you, we have no project managers. We have none of these. No testers, no producers, no usability engineers, no production staff. I mean, we are the production staff. Everybody is the production staff. Gabe is a part of the production staff at some points. We work in these rooms called cabals, which can be really annoying sometimes because there's a lot of chatter. There's you know, a group of sometimes this amount of people in one room. But it's a multidisciplinary type of situation. So the guy that sits next to me, Greg Towner, for example, is an animator. And you know, he's done work on a lot of Weta, great productions. I mean, pretty much a lot of the latest stuff. Avatar, King Kong, some of the Lord of the Rings stuff, and Transformers. So he sits just right next to me, and he's always making small chat. Very annoying. No, he's great. These guys are great because they look over, they'll see what you're working on, and they'll be able to allow you, you know, to do your work, but at the same time, you know, they drop hints of, you know, maybe if I'm doing a character design, they're like, oh, maybe try this or that. I have a programmer that works right behind me as well, you know, another concept artist, very talented guy, Andrew Wolf, and we're always working together. So it's this highly collaborative thing. You're not creating this little me, mine type of situation. You know, it's not being created within, you know, this little vacuum of the self. You're really like, you know, it's all this cross-pollination of really smart and talented people. And you know, this is what, 5 years after Team Fortress. You know, I'm still doing artwork for the fans. You know, I'll be like, hey, listen, we need some stuff, or maybe it'll just be on my own, and you know, just come up with a whole bunch of work that that our fans can enjoy. So it's really a lot of fun. I mean, I'm doing character design, I'm doing world design, do graphic design. I'm learning to model characters. I'm getting into the world editor and starting to get into really focusing on building worlds. So imagine, I mean, it's not just like, oh yeah, I'm just a character designer. No. I don't want to be that. I want to be able to create an entire package if I wanted to. It makes me more, you know, diverse and specialized at the same time. You know, it's kind of a crazy thing to do. I mean, it's not just, you know, I came into this being an illustrator, and now it's, you know, I can do illustration, yes, but I can also do a whole bunch of other things, and I think that that's a really important thing. You don't want to be a one-trick pony, right? Because people you know, it's a follow fashion thing, and you don't want to just like, you know, be 19 or 2012 or 2014, right? You want to just be able to keep going. You know, you're going to have a long career. You're going to have, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. I don't know. We'll see. But you're going to be, you know, doing a lot of different things. And to stay productive and stay inspired, you know, you're going to be learning a lot of different things once you graduate from school. I mean, it's going to exceed your expectations, but you just have to have faith in yourself to do it. Oh, sorry. And that's pretty much the end of my talk. I'm hoping that it's not too short. But anyways, I'm very much open for questions. So if you guys have, yes?
Yeah, so you're in charge of the art direction, the aesthetic and visual package of this. Were you then influential on the actual characters of the characters?
Of these characters?
Because we have you know, like all those videos of them doing.
Oh, the meet those?
Yeah, we have the meet the team videos and all, and of course they have their little animations inside the games. Were you influential in doing that too?
Well, helping out, like they would grab me, but you know, that's I mean that's one of our movie departments within Valve, and yeah, they'll call me in, but they're not. I mean, these guys are very talented. So what they're going to do is they're going to take all that stuff, and I have full faith in what they're going to do because I mean, they're Weta and Pixar, and all these guys have come from those places. You know, they know what they're doing, and they'll just take all those assets and make. You know, they have a story team as well, so they're all moving together. They really don't need me anymore for that. So, yes.
How would you say your own art has developed since you've been working so closely with other concept artists?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, you know, it's very important to do drawing and painting, you know, on the side. It's very difficult to do, of course, when you're, you know, working 10, 12 hours. You know, you get off work and you can't you've just been hemorrhaging art all day long. Oh, yeah, it can be it can be difficult, but I'm not really worried about that right now because this right now is my own art. You know, it's not a career for me. Like this is awesome. I mean, it's not about me again. You know, that'll come later on. But right now, I'm really enjoying, you know, this group effort of creating, you know, unique characters and worlds and stuff. I mean, I just think that, I mean, I'm still in school, but I'm getting paid. That's the only difference now. So I'm not really worried about developing my own style. I mean, there's some ways that I draw that somebody cannot break me to, you know, to conform to.
That's really great to hear.
Oh yeah. Just, you know, I mean, the thing is that you'll sometimes a concept. It's not about a style necessarily. It's really, sometimes it's about the ideation of that character, you know. And then you'll have 3 other people or 5 other people that will take your concept, right? And they'll do their own thing based off of yours. And then the final character that's going to be modeled out will take everybody's into account and make it that thing. So it's again all about the finalized product, and it's about, you know, the customer again. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, sure. So at the far.
What advice would you give to somebody who's wanting to shift from like more of an editorial illustration into game design?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I did it. I did it. I was 100% editorial. I was like 90%, and then, you know, I wanted to do like children's books as well. But I mean, really, once I went up to Valve, I was just. I mean, I love illustration. I'm just like you guys. I mean, I'm an absolute art geek, and my fiance will, you know, I'm always thinking about art. You know, have a hard time with the relationship in that sense because it's just always about art, right? Yeah, absolutely. You can do whatever you want. You can do, yeah, totally. Do it. But go ahead. You had.
What are some of the things that you had to kind of shift gears on doing game design that you didn't have to think about as illustration, like turnaround time or working with more people, or like what advice would you give for somebody to start practicing now?
Well, I think with editorial illustration, like a lot of it has to do with your uniqueness, right? A unique stylization that you will do for to solve an editorial problem, right? I don't know. Like each company is completely different, but when you're working for a game, yeah, you do have to kind of abide by not someone's rule, but the rule of what the visual design of that game is. So I'm working on a game right now that it's called Dota, and it's a game that I just for me it's not something that I'm not really into the art style per se, but I love the process by which it's created, and I love being challenged. It's a great challenge to to work on fantasy art because I've never worked on it before. So I'm actually creating certain characters that have like a Frazetta type of physique and that type of thing. So you just have to kind of embrace it and roll with it, and it just makes you very diverse. The dexterity. It's like learning languages, right? You don't know just this one language. You become very fluent in a lot of different languages. Lots of visual design languages. Yes?
Speaking of languages, what tools are you using for your painting in 3D?
Okay, so we're using, well, for the painting part,
Like those portraits you just showed a minute ago.
that's all Photoshop. And originally it's all hand-drawn, kind of, just value studies. And then,
They're not over a digital maquette or anything?
No. That's all just labor-intensive, thinking, and then just painting on top with Photoshop, many layers and glazes with Photoshop.
Did you ever sculpt anything before or is it all 2D for?
Pretty much all 2D, but I'm getting into ZBrush and Maya and Modo. We also have our game editor. It's called Hammer, and that's how we build the worlds. And I really want to get into that. And there's also SketchUp, which is a free Google app, right? It's free. You can take it and you can build worlds with it, and it's amazing. So that's something to even think about. And it has a great tutorial, and it's free. And that's another thing.
So you mostly, as far as 2D goes, just Photoshop? You don't use Painter?
No Painter, no. But I like using Paint, so I use a lot of gouache. Anything that's friendly for office use, so I don't go in with like any oil paints that will cause the programmers to faint. Don't like fainting programmers. It's like a lot of gouache, acrylic, watercolor, pencil, just that type of thing. So yeah. Gentleman with the glass.
Yeah.
First, yeah, you.
Okay.
There are two gentlemen with glasses.
A lot of people don't appreciate video games or movies or anything like that as art. Do you have any thoughts on that, or like
Well,
what that is?
There are actually a lot, I think. I mean, the ones that I've met, I understand, like, a lot of people when they see this presentation, they say, I had no idea that thought went into the actual art of the game, right? Because they're just like, it's fun, it was a great fun game. And then they realize, wait, and then I'll do a presentation and you're coming up with all these, you're trying to problem solve and come up with philosophies, and you're taking, whatever 2,000 years of art and trying to, use it digitally, in this thing that's constantly changing and moving around. I don't know. I think it's growing. It's just growing and growing, and I think video games are, they haven't reached their peak. That's for sure. Especially with technology, it's just going to keep going and going. And I think that, movies and games will cross-pollinate someday, and you're going to actually have like a very great relationship with the game. So it's going to be something spectacular. But yeah, I think that people are beginning to really take notice of that video games and the entertainment industry, it is an art form. Yes.
Yes. Do you think your traditional illustration education gives you an advantage over someone who has like a more vocational?
Oh yeah. It's the most important thing. Had I not taken, I worked really hard in art school. I really took seriously the foundation classes. People called me like kiss ass, teacher's pet, all that stuff. I mean, I was worried about failure, you know. I was scared of the future in the sense of like, if I don't have these skills, if I can't, you know, if I can't get this basic stuff, so to speak, you know, like analysis of form, color theory, perspective, if I can't do those things, like, you know, I'm going to be really limited. And, you know, yeah, getting into the industry, some of my modeler friends that got in earlier at Valve, you know, they went to some of these trade schools where they were simply just taught to model. You know, they weren't taught about taste. They weren't really taught about, I mean, they have the engine of Maya just, you know, figuring out the cast shadows for them, you know, and form. But, you know, doing it all by hand, I mean, actually, there's nothing like spilling, you know, water on a watercolor right before you're supposed to hand it in, you know, because you really appreciate that there's no undo button, right? So you really take care. I once spilled coffee on a pastel portrait I was doing, and it was fantastic, you know. It was, and I'd put it on the floor to like get out of the way of something, and I splashed the coffee. It was awesome. It was great, really. Yeah, it's one of those excuses. I spilled coffee. I can't do that. But yeah, it's very important, most important. Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. Considering the intersection of cinema production, i.e. theatrical film, animation, and game cinematics, where are the edges between art direction between those two endeavors? Where they overlap? Where are they still different? And do you want to talk about anything related to actually the art of interaction design?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there are things that you're very limited in doing with video games. You know, in a scene for a movie, for example, I mean, you're going to have cloth simulation. The way that a person's stepping has to be done really accurately, right? And with a video game, you know, the characters are based upon the game, will be moving around. They can jump on, you know, they can pretty much jump on anything. You know, they'll be floating in certain ways. You know, you can't, the human, the game player doesn't have time to really think about or want to even look at how articulated, you know, and how well animated the character is just, you know, simply moving up something. It's really like this quick thing. But they do it in such an impressionistic way so that you get an overall feeling for the character, you know. So like any of these characters, they have a very unique animation cycle, but it is very limited in what they can do. When you take those same characters and you put them in the Meet the Team series, for example, we do it all the way that you would do it in film. So there is that disconnect there. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's an important distinction to consider in terms of career development.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, we have a lot of people in film now coming over to video games to try and to help solve that problem to the best of their ability without breaking the game design. So
can you say a few words about the role of the actual interaction designer on the team? I mean, each game has sort of a unique approach to providing an environment where certain interactions can take place. Absolutely. Some people say that is actually the art in video games is very to the surface of things. So I'm curious about your views about that.
You mean per project and?
In general, as a medium.
Oh, yeah, for a medium. Well, each game is absolutely just different. We had Portal 2. You know, there's really just one character that you play, and then the rest are these robots. You know, and I mean, as far as the visual design, you know, we strip a lot of color out of it. We made it, you know, a very oppressive, you know, black and white and gray type of situation. And I think the animations actually really hold up great in the AI for the robots in that game, particularly. Left 4 Dead, of course. You know, each one, like, we can't all go down the stylistic route, right? So each game has to be diverse enough, right? So we have more realistic. I'm personally a lover in stylized because I think you can really get away with a lot of animation choices. But with the more realistic games, you have to kind of pull back, you know, especially on run and walking cycles and whatnot. without really giving them that iconic type of walk type of thing. So I hope that answers. Okay, great. Yes.
You were talking about when you first applied how they said maybe your style was a little bit too cartoony.
Yes.
And what kind of advice would you have for people that are applying to places, putting a portfolio together? How important is it to have variety and show diversity, or show maybe just one type of specialty area?
I think it's great to be very diverse. I was recently at the Ringling School of Art, and I have to say that I wanted to see more process, because they were coming up to me with these finished character studies or world studies, and they were worried about their style. And it's like, you don't have to worry about style. We want to see your process. We want to see a lot of thumbnails. We want to see just the sketching part. It's kind of like a book. You want to you really just want to show your process, and then this final grand concept, so to speak, and illustration as well. Like when you want to show your thumbnails, because the art director wants to also see how you come up and how you're going to visually communicate with them, not just verbally. So yeah, I mean that's I went to Pixar before I got up to Val. They actually invited me to come up, but I came with a portfolio that was was all my oil paintings. It was all these finished head studies. Didn't show any of my process, and they said, it's great stuff, but didn't see your process. Come back in 6 months. And then Valve called me in. So yeah, making sure that you have your process and not worrying too much about a style per se, but it is good to have a style as well. I mean, it's good to show how you are problem solving and how you're seeing the world in some way. So that'd be good. But also, yeah, show some realistic stuff as well, perhaps. Anyone else?
How do you avoid losing your individuality, when you work? Because it's a lot about collaboration.
Yeah.
And like how you said, there's two characters, you're going for something like that crosses them over. Yeah. But
that's okay. It's okay not to. I mean, you don't have to lose your individuality at all. Yeah. Again, you're going to. It's really you're adding, your insight to the problem, and you're going to be working. I work with 3 or 4 other guys that are doing concepts as well, and maybe I'm doing this one character, and they'll help me out with it. Maybe they'll take that character and do a paint over. And then they solve the problem, perhaps. It's when it really comes down to that final model. It's like when you open up the Art of Pixar book, you see a vast variety of different artists working. Each one has their own specific stylization. But then you look at that final character, and you can actually see little bits of everybody else. So it's really up to you, you don't have to adopt a specific, somebody else's style to make it a successful character design. You can just keep it yourself, keep it your own, for sure. Yes? Hey.
In an interview you did with Gamma Sutra, I believe,
yes.
in 2007, when the game came out, you were talking about a lot of games sticking to a particular style, which is just realistic military type stuff. And I wanted to ask you, what, as a person who's interested in the industry, who feels like he's still developing some sort of personal approach to his artwork, what can we do to prevent any project like that turning out to be like any of the others?
Yeah, it all comes down to risk. That's why a lot of those companies, it's risk-free, and it's usually a top-down company. That's the thing I love about Valve, is that it doesn't do that. It's this natural way of finding leadership. You don't have somebody that says, well, I'm senior here, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to lay down the law. Like we hired Jim Murray, for example, who's this amazing illustrator and character designer. And naturally, we're just like, go right to him, because he's so strong. And he takes risks, and his work is what we would want it to be. But yeah, I know what you mean about, it's just that we need to educate people, in a way. We need the bosses to listen to the people that are creating this. You know, they should listen to us. And we have, you know, in the industries, there are a lot of talented people, but sometimes, depending upon the company structure, they just get pigeonholed into, you know, it has to be a specific type of thing, you know, and for, you know, the games that were mentioned in that article, yeah, they're, you know, it's that type of company. So, you know, so it's up to us to take risks. And I think that further down the line, I mean, you see a lot of these small independent companies sprouting up, right? And these guys are doing really well. You know, they're making app games, or maybe they're starting their own thing. And the engines are readily available, right? You've got all these different engines that you can either get for free or purchase, and you develop a small little studio and you make something happen on your own. That's happening now, you know, it's happening more and more. And their stuff is great, very stylized, very imaginative. Yes?
A question about the Team Fortress gameplay. The thing about it, because it's you have to keep constantly developing the product after it's been released. You also have all these things that have been added onto it. Beyond just accessories like hats, you also have the whole comics that come with the game that comes off the website. And are you said you haven't been on doing the game much since it came out?
Well, I've been Portal, you know, coming up with all these other things, all these other fires to fight, but they still have a small core group of not a skeleton crew, but a group of guys that are really devoted. I mean, there's Eric Smith that's been on it since the beginning, since way back, and he's still committed to that project. He loves it, and you know, so you do have this small team of guys that are doing it, and if they ever need help, you know, they just need to ask, and we'll make time to help out. So it's.
I was just curious about how you keep the steam going on these games.
So yeah, well, it's, you know, at Valve, it's really about the customer, and if the customer's, you know, not happy, we try to find ways that they're going to be happy, because if that's not the case, then we're totally failing our people, so to speak. So it's, you know, we know a lot of people really enjoy the game, so we just want to keep it going. So we get a lot of surprises in the future too. So it's definitely not a dead project in any way. So it's going to be quite fun in the future. Yes.
Okay, so I'm kind of at one of these smaller like startup game companies. I just got hired on as a contract concept artist, and I'm really excited because they're giving me a lot of rain, like to make all the creatures and the plants and even some of the landscape and stuff. I'm also feeling a little bit overwhelmed because I'm like, I think right now the only concept artist, like there's, you know, a 3D model artist, but like, do you have any advice for me on?
I mean, yeah, if you're feeling overwhelmed by it, or?
Well, excited, but yeah, a teeny bit, because it's my first real job. So
right. That's, I mean, it's a challenge, but it's also, yeah, it must be very exciting.
Yeah.
As far as like the gameplay, like have they ironed out the gameplay, or?
Pretty much. I mean, like I was able to play an alpha of it, so like it is playable and it is fun, and I definitely have a good idea of how the game is going to work.
Right. I mean, but you know, working alongside people and just getting the ideas and collating them and writing them down, you know. And when I first started working on Team Fortress, I was probably just like you. I mean, in a sense, like just like I didn't know how to use Photoshop, you know. So I was doing all these things in gouache, really. Like I was sitting in an office with this one guy, and I was actually telling Randy about this. And this guy was coming up with 3 or 4 concepts a day, and I didn't know how to use the layers, you know. It's like I'm like looking over, I'm like, oh gosh, this guy's gonna quit. I'm gonna get fired. But then I came into work one day and I just brought my sketchbook, you know, what I was comfortable with, and I started doing it from there like that, and just building up. And then he turned around and he was like, "How did you do that?" It's like, well, I don't know how to do this, you know. It's like work with real gouache and paint, you know. Yeah, but you know, it's you just have to start enjoying it and loving it, and bring your guard down. take deep breaths and enjoy the process. And when you're doing it, play test the game, run through it a lot. It's very important that you start asking questions about the game, and because if you're the art director and that you are the one who's really like, you're married to the game side of it. You're the closest one to, the game designer. So, just really play testing the game, coming up with questions, and then developing the theme. Develop a theme. Look at lots of, I love looking at old vintage magazines and whatnot, because it's just, it's all out there. And you're not looking at, the current games out there, and you're not going to follow fashion that way. You can find so many different things when you're looking in another direction completely. So that might be a nice approach. Yes.
In terms of like the concept art industry, I think that it's kind of hard to have a job that has like longevity, or that it's like a lot of small jobs. What's your opinion on like job sustainability, or
Well, depending upon the company, right? Like, if you're going to be a contractor, your time is very limited, and or depending upon like if you're working at some of these larger film companies, Blue Sky, for example, where you're going to be put on a contract basis, and you've got like a year or so, and then you're up for review. But again, it's really about adopting a diverse quiver of tools, not just 2D, but embracing the 3D. It's happening. It's big now, and you have a lot of artists that are extremely talented doing 2D concept design, illustration, all those things. But now they know how to do use these 3D packages, which makes the pipeline of production much quicker, right? And so they're more powerful. I mean, if some of these guys want, they can move anywhere in the world. They've got the internet. They can work off-site if that's the case. So I mean, it's a really fantastic time for artists, for illustrators as well, because we just have to, find out these new avenues to go down. I mean, this is kind of the golden age of video games. So it's really fantastic. Any more questions? Yes?
You talked about how you can't really be a one-trick pony in like a game team. How much does a concept artist need to know about programming or design when they're working?
Well, programming. I mean, if you do programming, you get even bigger points. Then you're bridging two divides. You're cross-pollinizing. But yeah, again, I mean, it's like etching, right? Like back in the day, that was a specialized type of thing, right? Like 110 years ago, you had etchers, and we don't have etchers anymore, right? They've just been totally sussed out. And the golden age of illustration saw these high quality, oil paintings. Leyendecker was a multi-millionaire. He had his own chauffeur, and that only lasted a certain point. Again, like, it's really important to embrace, that you're going to need all these different tools now to be your own person, really, and have that longevity. So I can't. But before you get there, you have to get to the foundation and build yourself up, and then get on all those tools. Because I mean, it took me 5 years in art school to get to where I was competent in 2D painting and illustration, drawing, and all that. It took me less than 6 months to master Photoshop. And because it's just a tool, it's just a brush, and just the repetition of it, it's like, oh, after a while, I learned how to use the layers. It's like, that's easy. Pen pressure, oh, just click that button. Yeah. But to develop a taste of what works is very important as well. So, because you look out there in the video game industry and you see, a lot of people replicating other trends that are out in the industry, and you have these guys that are doing creature designs that look like other creature designs, and it all just kind of, everybody's following fashion, and so you got to kind of be able to dissect why they're doing it and why you shouldn't be doing that, so that you can actually make yourself, come come at the left side, you know? Come up with something that's totally unique and different. Anyone else? Yes?
You mentioned earlier that you wanted to make more games that were, you know, maybe more really stylized. If you were handed the art direction now, would you still go that route, or are there any directions you really want to take?
No, I just see that in video games, it's just so much more fun. You know, you can do all these, you know, fantastical things with stylization that you just can't do. It just gets really boring when you're doing realism, because it's the way that we interact within our world, and that's just my own personal taste, you know. But again, you know, I like feeding to a fan base that enjoys that type of visual design as well, because I myself enjoy it as well. So does that answer your question?
Any specific ideas that you were kicking around that you would leap at the chance to try, or if you think there's any low-hanging fruit the industry hasn't tried yet?
I do, but I have to keep them in mind. Nobody knows. I'm sorry, but it would be, again, it would be. I mean, there's no reason why somebody can't take this stylization. I mean, we've got all this stuff online, you know, all the shape language. It's all right there. There's no reason why you can't make a fantasy game or anything else that's based upon that type of stylization. I mean, any other company can do that, you know, and brand it your own way. I mean, yes?
So, just to continue like the previous question, so what do you think of games like Skyrim in contrast to this game, for example?
You know, to tell you the truth, I haven't even seen Skyrim. I mean, we have it on Steam, and I haven't even looked at it, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say. But all I know is that like everybody at the company plays it, and they're addicted to it. So.
Really realistic. The world is so crazy, huge. You could just like go anywhere. So in comparison to this world, where it's just like this one little bridge.
Right, and theirs is very expensive, isn't it? Or in Skyrim, isn't it expensive? Or?
Yeah, it's huge.
Right. I'll look at it and get back to you. It's so embarrassing. Yes.
What are your favorite games?
Oh, that's a great question.
To play and to look at.
Huh?
To play or to look at.
Well, you know, I don't really. This is the funny thing about me, is that I don't play video games, and I try not to look too much at a lot of video games. Like when I play a video game, it's really about like going to France. That's my video game. Going to Loire Valley or something, you know. And I mean, and for me, I love, if I'm on the off time, I'm doing art, you know. And I love creating games. I love taking, I mean, I play the games that I'm working on, and I love playing those games only to solve visual design problems. But I feel that like if I became too much of a fan, which I know that a lot of games out there are awesome and they're highly addictive and they're very beautiful. I don't want to be tainted, you know. So that way, I can come in with I hope, like something that's unique and fresh. I don't know. I hope so. Yes, Beck.
Somebody might have already asked this before, but especially coming from an illustration program that's very targeted towards editorial, what kind of steps would you recommend towards getting your a first career job in game production or concept art?
Well, it really comes up with a proper portfolio in a sense, right? About showing process. At its base level, trying to get into the industry, yeah, you want to show your processes. So if you're going to do character design, you're going to come up with a theme for the character, right? And then you're going to do the research. So maybe you show a bunch of images that are copyright safe, for example, or maybe it's images that you have taken yourself, you know, and then you come up with your thumbnails and just the iterative process so that you're just really showing your process, you know, and then down to world design, the same thing. And you saw the research phase, you know, just showing people the steps that it takes for you to get to that finalized design. Yeah, I mean, I was looking a lot at, you know, vintage photography, a lot of some of these workbooks from the 1960s that showed all these different advertisements. A lot of them were done using gouache, and so there'd be these really interesting architecture styles, and so you would just kind of draw from there. But you're doing a lot of research all the while, especially just coming up with the palettes. That was all just trying to come up with a very vintagey type of look to it, and it's just constantly researching, trying to develop it. So it's just you come up with it's almost like coming up with a Pixar book, right? Like the making of The Incredibles or Ratatouille. You want to have that type of portfolio, for example. And that will, that's a definite way to get in to the industry, for sure. Any more questions? Yes? Is that a hand, or was that? Yeah, it's not like a. All right, well, thank you very, very much for having me over today. Thank you. Thanks, Moby. Welcome, Randy.